From the Swiss Alps to the Canadian Rockies, celebrating unique connections between Switzerland and Canada. Brought to you by the Swiss representations in Canada.
Imagine your next trip to the bank where you will meet with a robo-advisor instead of a human teller to discuss your mortgage or an insurance quote. Or maybe there will be no trip at all. Your bot will be able to negotiate with its peers, bots at the financial institution, to get you the best possible financial product. In today's edition of our podcast, we're here with Professor Thomas Puschmann to take a look at the rapidly evolving financial industry. And maybe we can even take a peek into the future. What will the financial industry look like in the coming years? And finally, we will try to answer the question if our podcast audience will be able to meet Professor Puschmann one day on the university campus in British Columbia, Canada. Professor Puschmann is one of Switzerland's foremost fintech experts. He is the founder and director of one of the world's first fintech research labs, the Swiss Fintech Innovation Lab at the University of Zurich. He is also the founder and executive director of the Global Center for Sustainable Digital Finance at Stanford University. Professor Puschmann serves as an advisor to many strategic Swiss and international initiatives to foster innovation and develop an innovation and startup ecosystem worldwide. When it comes to the digital evolution of the entire financial industry, Thomas Puschmann has a hand in it. Welcome to the From the Alps to the Rockies podcast, and we're delighted that you're sharing your expertise with our Canadian audience today. I would like to start with your professional journey and the Swiss Fintech Innovation Lab in Zurich. You have been researching and working at the intersection between technology and business for several decades. How and when did you first become interested in fintech?
Yeah, first, thank you very much, Tamara, for the invitation, and thanks for having me here. It's a great pleasure since I've been in Vancouver last time, and I really enjoyed it very much, the discussion there. However, the fintech topic dates back a little bit longer than that. Fintech, as you all know, was born basically in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. So that was a time when banks and financial institutions were forced to let stuff go in droves, just as technologies such as blockchain and smartphones were hitting the market at that time. So the convergence of these two events basically led to a flood of new financial startups all around the world and led to what we call the so-called fintech revolution. And at that time back, I was working in consulting, and I saw the opportunity to go back to university and continue my work in research. So that's what I finally did then. And I remember the first times when we went to some Swiss banks and presented them our ideas back then, and how blockchain and cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin would become maybe important in the next few years. Remember, that was in 2008, 2009, and could maybe lead to a reorganization of the entire financial system then. You can imagine probably what they said back in these days. If you can help us to sell more products or to better advise our clients and become more efficient in back office, then yes, please, sure. But such a broader reorganization and research in new technology was not something they were looking for at that time. On the other hand, we saw an entirely new category of financial firms, the fintech startups, and also later on the big techs, that use these innovative technologies to serve clients' needs and optimize back office processes. So that's what excited me at that time. And I'm happy to be part of that journey now.
How did you come up with the idea of founding the Swiss Fintech Innovation Lab at the University of Zurich? And what are its main areas of activity?
The Swiss Fintech Innovation Lab was founded basically in 2015, 2016, so quite some time ago. However, its roots date back to my time when I was a visiting scholar at MIT, which was in 2013 already, so that's 10 years from now. And after having done research in that field for many years, I saw how MIT used its extensive network to startups and also to corporates to foster innovation there. It seemed to me that there was an opportunity to develop a center that is specifically dedicated also to fintech, since the financial sector is a very strong element in Switzerland, which makes up more than 10% of the GDP, right? During 2014 and 15, when that happened, I could talk to many experts from academia, politics, and in the industry. And after some visits also to abroad in Singapore, the US, and Hong Kong, we organized a big workshop back in 2015, where we brought together the entire Swiss community in that emerging field. So in 2016, then we officially launched the lab and co-founded also the association Swiss Fintech Innovations. That presents basically the biggest banks and insurance companies from Switzerland as well. So we had all major stakeholders at the table, which was an important element to really kick it off. And we are still proud that we are also among the first ones who found this kind of center at the same time when the MIT Center basically also was founded. That was very, very cool. And you also asked about what we are doing there, right? What are the main areas of activity? So, well, the lab basically focuses on, as you can imagine, on research and education. We've done many new courses, both on a master's, but also in executive education. It's also about innovation there very much, because we saw that the whole startup ecosystem was just growing. And now if you look at the map from Switzerland, it's like almost 400 startups in that field, which is quite a lot for such a small country, right? So we are conducting research in domains like digital assets, sustainable fintech, regulation, and many, many more. So everything that has to do with fintech in a broader sense. And what we also did is to motivate students to found their own startups. I think this was also something which was quite new. And I just had the opportunity also a few days ago to talk to one of the people that work in the University of Zurich's Innovation Hub, which we also founded during that time. Which is also kind of an instrument to motivate students and give them a little bit of a capital and network to become your own startup. So I think that is also something important, which we achieved a lot. So to bring more of this mindset into the university, which is great.
After founding the Swiss Fintech Innovation Lab in Zurich, you went to North America, to Stanford University, where you founded the Global Center for Sustainable Digital Finance, and you're currently an executive director. Could you tell us a little bit more about your role at Stanford?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Well, as you know, history sometimes repeats. So as the MIT visit, so was the Stanford visit then in 2019-20. I had the opportunity to have a longer stay here for a year. And there was this idea of how technology could be used to promote sustainability in the financial sector. As we saw that also in other industries that require novel ways of funding, for example, to accelerate sustainability on a broader scale. Sustainability problems are so complex, so you have to co-create solutions across disciplines. Take the example of carbon offsetting, for which still no good solution exists. With all the various fraud cases we had with projects that weren't really carbon negative or didn't even exist. So there are currently solutions that are explored that rely, for example, on blockchain and decentralized governance by local communities. So combined with data from satellite images, which then shall ensure that rainforest preservation, for example, is really done in a proper way. So you maybe can ensure that in a better constellation with local communities combined with global data, then you can do it with organizations that we may not trust. And I think the digital innovation specifically is significantly reshaping the financial sector, pioneering also new avenues for sustainable access, distribution, management of financial resources. And there is a myriad of real-world applications in that, others than the one that I mentioned before, such as digital supply chain finance across agricultural, for example, and fashion value chains. So there is so much more here that can be done. These potentials opened our eyes, and the idea for the center was then born at the same time. When Stanford had its plans for the new School of Sustainability. That's basically, and by the way, also the first new school in the last 75 years that was founded alongside School of Engineering, School of Medicine, and so on. So this is a very big undertaking here. And this new school, which we are connected to with the center, draws together all areas of scholarship that are together needed really to understand what is happening. So this was a perfect match. And although COVID then came around in 2020 and it required us to extend our plans since many activities were then stuck during that time. But then finally on May 26th this year, we finally launched the center at Stanford as a collaborative effort between Stanford, the University of Zurich, and also KAIST in South Korea. And we're very happy to have that also backed up by the GIZ, which is one of the biggest development organizations in the world based in Germany. So I think since then, this whole journey started. And yeah, it requires me also to travel a little bit forth and back between the two countries, but that is fine.
You have taught at the University of Zurich, have been a visiting scholar at MIT and Stanford, have done research at the universities of St. Gallen and Leipzig, and now finally you are an adjunct professor at the University of the Fraser Valley in Canada. Do you find that European and North American students are different in the way they approach the learning process and in their level of curiosity about financial innovation?
So I think one of the major advantages that you have, especially in North America, for example, is that it's very open to the world. So these countries like Canada and also the US, they invite people from all over the world to really innovate here. However, there's one major, I would say, cultural difference that is worth noting. In Europe, we tend to very often critically question things more often than this is done here in North America. On the other hand, North Americans tend to more often try things out just before critically evaluating them, right? I still remember that poster that hang on the wall in the school where my kids went to during our stay here at Stanford in 2019. And it had like 10 rules for everyday school life. And the first one was you can fail. And the second one was, but you never give up, right? So it's kind of that cultural difference. But both approaches have pros and cons, I would say. If we would be able, and that's what we also want to accomplish by our new center, is to bridge these two approaches and to come up with kind of a best of both worlds approach, right? I think both is necessary. You have to explore new fields very quickly. On the other hand, you also have to question things more than we did in the past. And I'm pretty sure that both cultural things will help us here.
Now turning to the Canadian chapter of your professional journey. You visited British Columbia for the first time in February 2022. Could you tell our listeners what brought you to Canada at this time?
Yeah, well, the original visit has its roots already back in 2017. And that's when I met Andreas Rufer, who was the former Consulate General of Switzerland in Hong Kong. And then in July 2021, Andreas approached me about this potential collaboration with the University of the Fraser Valley, and together with Chris Schinkers then from the university, we saw a great opportunity to bring together our idea of sustainability and fintech in a geographic region that strongly relies on its environment, especially also in agricultural and farming. So there is a lot of potential here in terms of insurtech, for example, for the region. And that's what we are currently exploring. Together with Chris, we are working in three major areas here. So first one is capacity building and involving faculty in a new academic incubator. That's how we call it there. And the second one is also on grant applications to set up this incubator here. And third, also faculty and student mentorship in relation to the development of this incubator. So it's very much centered around how this new setup and emerging role of the University of the Fraser Valley in its region.
Do you see the advantages of having a fintech lab in Abbotsford as opposed to, say, downtown Vancouver?
Yeah, I think especially if you take into account those special demands of the region that I mentioned already, like the farming and the agricultural footprint that it has, I think from that perspective, it's very important here. And that's also in line what we are planning here with the University of the Fraser Valley. So currently, as we work on this topic and get it from the ground, however, such initiatives cannot be taken from the ground within a few weeks, right? So it will rather be a long-term partnership here. For example, as a first step now, we need to bring together the relevant stakeholders that are really from that region and discuss the needs of them, of the institutions and also from the communities there. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
What are your plans in terms of your future continuing engagement with the University of the Fraser Valley?
I think it will be specifically centered around this incubator and also the innovation ecosystem there so that we can develop this and positioning the university in this greater context with this new role, also providing services back to the community there. I think that is the long-term goal here.
What are the common trends and differences in the development of the fintech industry in Switzerland and North America, Canada, and the USA? Do you see potential in sharing knowledge and best practices between the two regions?
Yeah, so North America, and if you put that also in a broader context, is still the strongest driver of innovation in sustainable fintech. We had just a recent analysis of global startups in that field that were 531 startups, more precisely, we identified in this exercise, and almost 20% of them are in the US, I must say, followed by the UK with more than 16%, Germany with almost 12%, and Switzerland ranked fourth with more than 11%. Canada has like a little bit more than 2%, is still also in the stronger field. So they are all very good represented in this sector. The interesting message here is from the analysis, which from these countries, which make around 1/3 of all the startups, if you count together Switzerland, the US, and Canada, that it shows really the relevance of this emerging sector among the fintech startups more in general. And we think that this leading role also opens an avenue for further knowledge sharing and research among these countries. For example, Europe has been strong in settling the regulatory agenda within their ESG framework. And on the other hand, North America has leading its way in AI developments, for example, which provides huge potentials for automated reporting, the data analysis, insurance analysis, and things like that. So I think this is a huge potential here. So bringing together, again, these both worlds can provide really good opportunities here.
There are reports that Canadian fintech investment has shrunk in the first half of 2023. Do you see this as a global trend, and should we be concerned that the fintech industry will stagnate?
It's true that the numbers have indeed been decreasing over the past year. However, it seems to me that it is kind of a normal cycle, right? If you compare it to the cycles in the 80s or then in the internet bubble was in the late 90s, and then also after the financial crisis. When I talk to the VC community here, the venture capital community, then they say it's not that bad as these three former ones were. So there is still capital around for startups to be raised. I think that's just a normal trend that we can see if the economy cools down a little bit because of the interest rates that are rising. So it's a little bit harder to get capital, but however, it's still possible if you are in the right topics like AI, for example, now, or sustainability also. So I think it's not that bad.
Speaking about AI, how do you see key technological innovations impacting traditional financial institutions in Europe and North America? Should we expect technology completely replace human financial advisors and bank tellers, or we should expect friendly collaboration?
Well, the tone in this discussion has shifted between banking without banks. There was this quote by Bill Gates around 3 decades ago: banking is necessary, banks are not. However, this has shifted between the two comments over the years. So what we can learn from history is that even though technology has offered automation in many areas like farming, for example, back office operations, and so on, humans have always managed to find new opportunities here. But it's true that we have seen over the past century or so that so-called blue-collar back office automation is now taking place, also in those client-related activities enabled by chatbots and other AI-driven solution, which is then called the so-called white-collar revolution. And I think it will lead to fundamental changes, but the effects of which we can only roughly estimate now. It is also surprising that the whole digital technology field has grown really quickly. The effects of that might take a little bit longer because we humans adapt not so fast as the technology.
As both Canada and Switzerland, two highly technologically industrialized countries, are committed to tackling climate change, where do you see the role of sustainable finance in the transition to a less carbon-intensive economy?
Yeah, I think sustainable finance, and especially the topic that we touch upon with sustainable digital finance, so connected to technology, has brought implications for the global economy, supporting the development of sustainable infrastructure and businesses, promoting more equitable and inclusive economic growth, enhancing efficiency and effectiveness also of capital allocation. It is poised to play a critical role in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, the so-called SDGs, by unlocking significant benefits, I think, such as digitalizing payments in developing countries, for example, redirecting capitals through improved information, leading to sustainable consumption and decisions. So it touches basically everything from the traditional economy, the so-called real economy, but also the financial sector itself, and from the capital markets to become greener and more sustainable. But also enabling, for example, that's a big discussion currently also with the global south and the global north, how that can happen, right? So I think enabling innovation in the countries where it's really most needed is the right way to go here. And here, sustainable finance and sustainable digital finance can really help to empower people, as they all have the smartphones around. So you have the technology with the people directly. You only need to enable these platforms. And there is a big discussion now with the G20 that just released a report about these so-called DPIs, digital public infrastructures. So it means basically that each country has its public transportation, for example, it has airports, it has streets, it has all the energy infrastructure in place. And this report also highlighted many of these new things that are currently emerging, like the digital identities, for example, digital payments infrastructures, also in the developing countries. So there are a lot of things that are not in place yet. And I think this is one of the key areas where sustainable finance and digital finance specifically can really contribute here.
As someone with a deep interest and expertise in sustainability and sustainable finance, what recommendation would you give to our listeners in terms of simple ways to reduce daily carbon footprint?
Yeah, well, as a consumer, we often have no transparency about our behavior, about the impact of our behavior. So here again, Fintech, for example, can help to promote a more sustainable lifestyle. For example, there are developments underway that some startups that analyze our payments, for example, and provide you with a snapshot of your carbon emission footprint according to your spendings. So if you frequently book flights, for example, then the system won't provide you with good carbon emission numbers, probably. Such transparency will also help consumers, but it won't, of course, solve the challenge of carbon emission reduction. but it at least opens your eyes, because many say, well, I don't do that much and my carbon emission footprint is not that bad. But however, if you really see how you behave and what you are doing in your everyday life, sometimes it's really eye-opening.
Thank you for your words of wisdom. It's especially valuable to hear them from someone with such a deep interest and expertise in sustainability and sustainable finance. We hope to see you soon on campus in Abbotsford, and we wish you a successful launch of the University of the Fraser Valley's Fintech Innovation Lab that will bring positive change to the communities of Canada West and beyond.